Morning, everyone. We're just letting the waiting room folks come in before we jump right to the start. Be another minute or so. All right, looks like we have a critical mass, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Craig Willingham. I'm the Deputy Director for the CUNY Urban Food Policy Institute. We're a research and action center based at the CUNY Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy. And we work on a wide range of food policy related topic areas, everything from jobs in the food sector to food insecurity, to the connections between upstate agricultural producers and downstate consumers, and a host of others. Thank you for joining us this morning. Hopefully you'll find this forum informative. We try to make these events interesting and invite compelling speakers, and I think we have a really great lineup today. And this topic, this idea of the role of technology and food access is one that we've been interested in for some time, and our institute has actually conducted some research in this area. So we thought it would be interesting to revisit what's happening with respect to technology post-COVID and talk a little bit about some of the things we might be able to expect from the future. And as we all know, digital technologies such as online food pantry ordering systems and SNAP Online pilots are increasingly being explored as tools to facilitate food access and reduce food insecurity. The twin public health and economic triggers caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has further accelerated these trends and intensified the need to use online technologies to provide basic social services in both urban and rural regions. With 48 states now part of the USDA SNAP Online purchasing pilot program, and a growing number of digital applications and platforms being established to better support emergency food providers in New York City and across the US, this Urban Food Policy Forum will ask the question, what role do these emergent digital technologies play in increasing food access and in reducing hunger and food insecurity in the post-COVID-19 transition and beyond? For today's panel, we have Darren Jones from Plentiful, who's an NYC client adoption lead, Molly Paffenroth, Senior Director of Government Relations for the National Grocers Association, Thomas Neve, Executive Director for Reaching Out Community Services, and our own Nevin Cohen, Associate Professor at the CUNY Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy and Research Director for the CUNY Urban Food Policy Institute. There's a link in the chat with a document providing further information on the panelists' bios if you're interested in diving in a little bit deeper. And with that said, I want to jump right into it and turn things over to Darren to start us off. Darren?
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, it's being shared now.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much today. My name is Darren. I am the client adoption lead for Plentiful, and I'm also the pantry capacity and operations manager at United Way. Today, I'm going to speak to you about how Plentiful has improved food access for pantries across New York City. Plentiful is a pantry management software tool that is the first of its kind to offer a client interface and a pantry interface, allowing the two of them to communicate with one another to reduce wait times, improve client statistics. Also, most importantly, allow them all to communicate with one another. So when we built Plentiful, before we were able to build Plentiful, we worked to actually get a better understanding of how it operates and what pantries really need. So when we first built Plentiful, we ran several surveys. The first one was to ask pantry directors what was their primary responsibility. We found out that pantries felt that making clients feel welcome was the most important part of their job. And so we built Plentiful with the mindset of client dignity. We used to improve client experience and make them feel more welcome when they visit the pantry. We've also asked pantries what they felt was important or essential for their operations. Majority of pantries felt that making it easy for clients to discover new pantries, it felt important for them to gather client feedback, improve communication with clients, Also create easy reports on who on the clients and the population they're serving. Most importantly, reducing client wait times. And last but not least, helping clients who do not speak English. Found out that at the time there was very little software that provide all these resources and tools. There are different softwares that can provide one or the other, but none of them really work together to make it easy for directors and clients to improve food access. For a lot of pantries, were operating on a volunteer and limited staff basis. They also had to use pen and paper to tracking their clients. So when clients came in for the first time, they have a long list of clients have to fill out a long list of information, such as their name, household size, their address, etc., on a pen and paper. Pantries would use that and store it in a book, or if they're able to afford it, which is very few, put it in a digital database such as Excel, Salesforce, or Unicentric. While majority of pantries were unable to afford that, a lot of them were either collecting very little data, or they were keeping it in a textbook that took them time for them to find clients to update their information when they came in. And when clients came into pantries, they were to fill out their first name, last name, household size each time they came in, which is not always the most accurate and consistent. When there were issues at a pantry, whether the pantry had to close for an emergency or they had to reschedule for a different date, or even they had a delivery that was running late, they had to call either have to leave a note at the door or call each client who came in. On the client end, the experience wasn't that great either. For clients, they had to wait in long lines and wait times. For them to find new pantries, they have to find out from their either friends or peers, or they have to go to a church or a community-based organization that provided them with a little bit of information about organizations nearby. With all this information that was handed to them, the information that was given was usually outdated and wasn't up to date. And when they were able to find a pantry, there's a good chance that the pantry had inconvenient operating hours that conflicted with their work schedule or any other schedule they had, whether it was taking their kids to school or even taking their family to elder care. With all those areas involved, we were trying to figure out, we built Plentiful to address them all. We built Plentiful to reduce client wait times, improve communication with clients, help all clients regardless of age, technology, language, or even technology skills. Last but not least, we made it easier for clients to discover new pantries. With Plentiful, we are able to address these gaps through 3 main portals: the Pantry app, the mobile app for families, and Plentiful SMS. Now let's dive a little deeper to understand how these 3 portals work together to improve food access and bring technology to both pantries and clients. The Pantry web app, we make it very easy to use. Pantries can manage their reservations and also update their schedule, allowing clients to have the most up-to-date and accurate information. They're able to send messages to their clients, letting them know when they have to cancel, reschedule, or pretty much anything they would have to leave on the door in the past, or make phone calls to other clients. They can do it with a simple text message. They go directly to their phone within seconds. With Plentiful, they can use Plentiful to register new clients and put all their intake information on a digital database that's accessible on any computer. So therefore, instead of having to go through big textbooks or going through files to find information, they can simply type in their phone number, name, search for the client, and plug their information there. All the information that's on Plentiful can be found in the reports. So Plentiful generates reports for pantries, understanding the clients they serve, how many they're serving, how many are new, and most importantly, one thing that is very revolutionary that pantries cannot do without Plentiful is having a heat map of where their clients are coming from. A lot of pantries who use Plentiful are amazed at how they found out that with Plentiful that their clients are coming from different areas. The other pantries tell us that they were amazed to find out that they work in Flushing, Queens. They have clients coming from the Bronx and Staten Island. Along with all those other features we also just recently built a QR-based check-in and scanning system, where clients can come in, show us their QR code, which we call Plenty Pass, and help out with rapid intake and check-in. We also have a mobile app, which works perfectly with the web app for the pantry. The mobile app is for clients. It's available in 9 languages and allows clients to make reservations, find pantries that are near them or near where they are at the moment. Allows them to also view upcoming reservations. They can also receive notifications from clients and also messages about when pantries are closed or if there's anything going on at the pantry. The Plenty Pass allows them to scan it for rapid intake and check-in, so therefore they don't have to fill out a form for every pantry they visit. And the mobile app is available for Android and iOS. We're working to build a web app, which will be released this summer. So we're able to address more clients who may not have a cell phone or a smartphone. When we built Plentiful, we understood that 90% of clients have a cell phone. At 90% of clients with a cell phone, only 30% do not have a smartphone. And so we had one question we had to address at that moment, which was how can we address the 30% without smartphone? And the answer was simple: Plentiful SMS. We built the text messaging feature that clients can text in to make their reservations. So Plentiful, they can text they can text food through 726-879, or if they're at a pantry, they can just scan the QR code, and it'll send a message for them automatically. With Plentiful, they can also with the Plentiful SMS, they can use it the same way as a mobile app, where they can make and manage their reservations, receive notifications, and updates about the pantry they visit. All three of these portals work very well together, and they've actually shown us the big changes and improvements they've made in New York City. For food insecurity, we have seen that Plentiful has grown since we started. Since 2017, we have provided 3.5 million visits across 614,000 households. Plentiful has continued to gain traction since then, and we're only growing. In March and April of 2020, we have noticed there was a big change in how pantries operate. At the time, 25% of Plentiful pantries closed. Despite the number of pantries closing, we've seen an increase in visits and users. The increase in visits and users allows us to also understand how important it is for technology to be used. And we have seen also a significant increase in the number of reservations, number of clients using the app, and number of clients who are making their own reservation through the app. With Plentiful, one important thing we like to notice is that when we started off in April 2020, in April of 2020, we conducted a survey for all new clients who came into pantry. For all the new families who visited a pantry. We noticed that we conducted a survey with over 42,000 new clients. Out of the 42,000 new clients, only 82% of the families did not visit a food pantry in the last 6 months when they registered. This showed us how important it was for Plentiful to be used, how important Plentiful is to New York City for pantries and clients, making it easy for clients to find food pantries in their neighborhood, and also making it easier for pantries to register new clients. While we have seen a lot of significant impact with Plentiful, both on the web app for visits and for increasing reservations, we also want to highlight another important thing is client saving, wait times. Plentiful, we have seen a significant reduction with client wait times. When we started off, we ran a survey with pantries who are using reservations, Plentiful reservations, pantries who are not using Plentiful reservations, and pantries' ideology of the wait times. Pantries believe that clients are waiting 26 minutes on average. When we conducted our survey, we arrived at pantries 2 to 4 hours before the service began. We found a lot of clients waiting at pantries who did not offer Plentiful reservations. During that time, we waited for the entire service and measured everyone that came in and found an average wait time was 1 hour 25 minutes for pantries without reservations. We found out that further study that pantry directors do not estimate that clients are coming to the pantry coming 2 to 4 hours before the service starts, that clients are spending the night in their car waiting for food. And sometimes clients are coming and having a rotation of families waiting in line, where the mom would come first, dad would come later on, etc. Our wait time analysis can account for all those features. And we found out that with Plentiful reservations, we were able to reduce those wait times and allows families to spend more time with themselves and have more time for other needs as well. So we found out with Plentiful reservations, we can yield substantial client wait times. Now, one of the big questions that we always ask with technology is how do people feel about it and what is the feedback? Well, with Plentiful, we have a net promoter score of 58.6. After clients visit a pantry, we ask them, would you recommend Plentiful to a friend or a neighbor on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being absolutely not, 10 being absolutely yes. We calculate the score together to get the net promoter score. Anything positive is a good thing. Anything above 50 is exceptional. With Plentiful, with a 58.6 net promoter score, we find it to be very exceptional and much better than a lot of other companies in our industry. In fact, for reference, we have actually included from our 2018 study other industries as well. So it's Comcast, Walmart, Google, etc. Now, I'd like to conclude today with a quote from one of our pantry directors, who pretty much gave us somewhat of feedback and response that we hear from a lot of pantries who adopt Plentiful. Christina Bowman, she said that Plentiful was amazing as it helped her help her reduce client wait times. After she adopted Plentiful, she walked up to the church and saw only one person waiting in line, and she believed it was pure magic. She believed that all the guests really seemed to love the new setup, and she never really saw a line after that. In fact, in the photo you see today, this is Plentiful. This was actually the first day they used Plentiful. And they were just getting started and allowing clients to register to the new system and giving them information about how it operates. To this day, Xavier Mission has a line that is not even this long. Clients come at their reservation time, check in, and go get their food. So thank you so much for your time today, and I do look forward to speaking to you all later on today.
Okay, thank you. It's likely some of the people on the call have heard about Plentiful, and it's really great to catch up on what's been happening over the last couple of years, particularly during the pandemic, and how the technology has been embraced. So thank you. Next up, I want to turn it over to Molly Pathenroth. Molly?
Thank you. I'm Molly Poffnerth. I am Senior Director of Government Relations for the National Grocers Association. NGA is a national trade association located in Washington, D.C., representing the independent sector of the supermarket industry. Our members are family-owned, privately held grocery stores, as well as their wholesalers and suppliers. Independents are proud private partners in federal nutrition programs, such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. We really play a critical role in combating food insecurity and the broader issue of food deserts, as many independent grocers are unique in that they serve hard-to-reach communities in urban and rural areas. We're often the only access point for healthy foods like fresh produce, meats, and dairy, and a lot of these harder-to-reach communities. So today, I'd really like to share some background on the SNAP online purchasing program, which is an important pilot that USDA has expanded across the country in the past year that allows retailers to provide an additional shopping option for their SNAP shoppers. I'll provide some background on the SNAP pilot program, the current status. As I've mentioned, it's been expanded tremendously, the application process that retailers have to go through, as well as the challenges and the burdens that the smallest of retailers face. And then lastly, I'll touch base on the legislative efforts designed to help combat these barriers that independent grocers are experiencing. So starting off, let's rewind back to 2014. The 2014 Farm Bill mandated that a SNAP online pilot be conducted to test the feasibility and implications of allowing retail food stores to accept SNAP benefits through online transactions. The pilot was supposed to involve at least 5 retailers in at least 3 different states. The goal was just to make sure that SNAP transactions online could happen in a safe and secure manner. Next up, 2016, USDA FNS released a request for volunteers to states and retailers. The 2-year SNAP online purchasing pilot, those applications were due back in November 2016. And then in January 2017, FNS announced the selection of several states, New York, Washington, Alabama, Iowa, Oregon, and Nebraska would be part of the pilot program, as well as several retailers, including Amazon, Dash's Market, Fresh Direct, Hy-Vee, Safeway, ShopRite, Walmart, and Wright's Market, which is a single store operator in Alabama. So those were the original states and the original retailers that were selected to participate in the 2-year pilot program. Fast forward to April 2019, the first state that launched the pilot program was New York State. And then in the following months, it launched in Washington, Alabama, Iowa, Oregon, Nebraska, and then finally Alabama at the very beginning of the pandemic in March 2020. So the plan was to move forward with the pilot program for a couple of years, make sure that everything was working smoothly with the retailers that were already launched as part of that pilot program. But then the COVID-19 pandemic came about in March 2020, and USDA realized that so many SNAP shoppers were now shopping from home, and we needed to be able to expand the pilot program so that more shoppers had the ability to shop online using their benefits. So USDA opened up the SNAP online purchasing application process to additional retailers in additional states at the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020. And at this point in time, like I said, e-commerce just really skyrocketed. Many consumers were shopping from home because of the pandemic, and a lot of independent grocers that weren't already online offering e-commerce quickly moved into the e-commerce space. And they also really innovated and provided additional services for their customers like curbside pickup and delivery options as well. So today there's 47 states and the District of Columbia that are participating in SNAP Online. At this point in time, it's really mostly the largest retailers and the big box stores that are participating in SNAP Online, like Amazon and Walmart and Aldi, but more independents and single store operators have launched in the past several weeks. I'll tell you that I have many members that are independent grocers of my organization that have been working through the application process for many months. Unfortunately, the process is very slow. And it's lengthy. And we really saw Amazon and Walmart move into all these additional states at the beginning of the pandemic because they were already launched as pilot retailers. So they didn't have to go through that whole additional application and testing process. So NGA is doing everything we can to help get more independents up and running for this program. And I'll go into some of those details towards the end of my presentation and talk about some of the legislative efforts that we've been working on as well. But just to give you a little bit of background on the process that the retailers have to go through to become eligible to be able to participate in SNAP Online, like I said, it's a really lengthy process. First of all, the retailer has to be an eligible SNAP retailer. They have to be SNAP authorized. Next, they have to have an online e-commerce presence. So if they don't have a website set up already for online shopping, they have to be able to work through that process and get that. And the website has to be capable of meeting a whole variety of requirements to operate online purchasing, including integration of secure online PIN entry via the third-party processor. It has to be able to handle error handling, matching refunds back to the original purchase, being able to handle weighted items, not charging sales taxes on SNAP purchases, and then also only eligible foods can be purchased using SNAP benefits. And a lot of transactions that occur not only in the grocery store, but also in the online space are multi-tender transactions. So a shopper who is a SNAP shopper will be purchasing, several produce and meat items, SNAP eligible items, and then separately they might also be purchasing paper towels and toilet paper and cleaning supplies, which are not SNAP eligible. So the website system for SNAP Online has to be able to manage which items are SNAP eligible from a technical component. And it might sound very straightforward, but it is very technically challenging. And these are all kinks that have to be worked with in order for the retailer to move forward in the process. When the retailer has been able to meet all of the steps I just described, they will submit a letter of intent to USDA FNS, confirming that they can meet these requirements. And then FNS will work with them to secure that the necessary information for their application is adequate, and they'll work with the third-party processor for secure PIN entry to move forward. This process can take a while, and then an end-to-end testing period has to occur as well. When I say take a while, it can take many months. We've seen the process take from 6 months up to even a year in some cases, and it's slow. And that's really one of the barriers for getting more independence up and running, and that's why we're not seeing more independence right now. NGA has released a SNAP Online purchasing toolkit to help retailers work through this process. It's available free of charge for NGA members. I can share the link in the chat when I'm done speaking, so you can have access to that. I do have a sample that would be available free of charge, but the greater toolkit would be available for purchase. So I know that was a lot that I just shared, but I think it's also important to talk about more of the barriers that independent grocers are experiencing that are preventing some of them from participating. Like I mentioned earlier, it's very technically challenging, and the smallest of retailers don't necessarily have somebody on staff to manage Snap Online full time, whereas the Walmarts and the Amazons of the world, they have a tech team that works on these issues. It's a full-time project. So it's technically challenging. Secondly, one of the biggest barriers is that it's actually incredibly expensive for a retailer to participate in Snap Online. There's upfront costs associated with not only the e-commerce company, but also with the third-party processor, depending on how many stores a retailer has. And then there's monthly charges after that. There's individual transaction fees. There's just a lot of fees that all come about. And then you add on top of that the labor component, making sure that you have the right refrigeration space to get all of the orders together. And additionally, SNAP benefits cannot be used to pay for delivery fees or associated charges, understandably so. But then it's up to the retailer to decide whether they will take that hit or pass it along to the consumer. And that becomes even more challenging when we have a multi-tender transaction. And I know that's been a topic of conversation when it comes to the government potentially paying for delivery fees. Like I said, a lot of the SNAP transactions are multi-tender. So again, very expensive. The application process is also very slow and lengthy. And then lastly, I think the biggest issue right now is just that the independents are really being left behind compared to the larger retailers, because like I said, Amazon and Walmart have really been able to move in to all these additional states, whereas all additional retailers are having to work through this application and testing process. So there are a few legislative efforts that have helped address some of these concerns and barriers for the independents. First off, $1 million was included in the end of year 2020 COVID relief package, specifically for FNS to implement SNAP online purchasing. The goal there was to help FNS by giving them some additional resources to work through this approval process a little bit more quickly and smoothly. Secondly, there was $25 million included in the 2021 COVID relief package to support SNAP online purchasing. And a main component of that funding is technical assistance to help retailers with SNAP online purchasing. So we're very hopeful that that $25 million will be used to help get more independents launched in the program by connecting the dots for them, helping them with some of those technical components and challenges that I alluded to. And then another item that NGA is working on is the idea of getting a tax credit to help the smallest of retailers cover some of those upfront costs associated with getting set up for SNAP Online. Like I said, it's really expensive, and we think a tax credit could go a long way in helping the smallest of retailers with some of those costs to really help boost them at the beginning of the process, get them launched, and go from there. So that is everything that I had planned to share today. I'm hopeful that you all have some good questions for me in a bit, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Molly. Really interesting policy developments on the horizon. Hopefully we'll see some of those actions get implemented. I want to move on to Thomas Neve. Thomas, if you're ready to start.
Unmute myself. Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Thomas Neve. I'm the founder and executive director of an organization called Reaching Out Community Services. It was very simple. We wanted to make people that struggle with food insecurity find a place of hope and relief. And that's what we've been dealing with for the last 30 years. We provided, from the beginning of time, obviously, it was always a bag distribution. I never found that to be intelligent, only because people would actually say, I wonder what this is. I wonder if I should eat this. I wonder if I could eat this. And I found that to be a waste. So we had made a client choice, more like a supermarket style where people will come in individually. We would take care of them. We would say, listen, follow me. Choose your juice, choose your macaroni, choose your vegetables, choose your whatever. And I found that to be not time consuming at all. So we developed our own program. We call it the DCCFP. We usually put a name for that, meaning dignified caring can help feed people. So In that case, it was digitally choice. So we had all these kiosk machines. People come, they would choose their food. Obviously, they're not going to choose something they wouldn't consume or have dietary needs problems with that. So we knew there was no waste. My whole idea was not to waste food. I see the waste of food all over the place, hear the stories about it. And I felt that that's not productive. That's not even constructive to give people food and it's not even going to be utilized. So we developed about 5 years ago a program. The program works very well for us in a sense. I would marry it if it was human. It just does everything we want it to do. Right from the whole idea was to keep it dignified, at the same time to keep it, where we don't more other people will get more things than others. I wanted to prevent that. So I want to make sure that we're treating everybody equal and fair. So the program has that ability to do that because the staff or the volunteers don't know what food they're putting into this basket to bring to the waiting area because they don't know who they are until they get there. So it doesn't help, let me help that other person more than that person. Everybody gets treated fair. Everybody's able to choose food based on their want, their need. So more or less, it's been working very well. It has many other features that we developed with it, outside of inventory, outside of how many people are in the family, dietary needs, like if people have, diabetes or high blood pressure or they're gluten-free, they're only ones that are going to see it. I realize after all these years, everybody wants, but not everybody needs. So the hard thing is I don't want anybody to take away from other people that need it. So that's why they don't see certain things. When we register that person for the first time, we ask them those questions. Do you have any dietary problems, that needs, and blah, blah, blah. So they'll be the only one when they come to slide their card and the system opens up for the foods to choose, they'll see things that normally anybody else wouldn't see because they don't have gluten problems. They don't have hypertension problems. So they don't see those items. So the program just works wonderful. We actually are working with Planet Food as well because we have a mobile food program. So we want to help our constituents with receiving the food. A lot of people have hard times getting here. So throughout the pandemic, obviously, we recognize that fact. There was people going through hard times. How'd they get there? I would see people online. They would be, in the upper 70s and 80s, with a cane and the hassle just to get the food, but there was nobody really there to assist them. And that's when we expeditiously developed a home delivery service. Again, I want to make sure that we're not just bringing food, here you go. And meanwhile, they look at it like, I can't even eat this stuff. So we're working with some type of a digital program where they could actually choose their food before it's delivered to them. It's not easy, but we're working on that. And it's just been a journey of interest. I try to have fun doing good things. So I love the Salesforce program. I love the Plentiful program. These are the things that, just makes what we do interesting. At the same time, we're being effective, we're being productive, and we're accomplishing the goal, but we're using technological, the concept to make it happen expeditiously. And more or less, that's what's happening with this program. We don't have to have lines down the block. I mean, we're a 5-day operation throughout the week, 8 hours a day. So we don't really normally have the lines. They had about 9,500 families registered with us before the pandemic. Don't know how many more now. Everybody's issued a ID card so they could come and they could swipe their card, and then when their screen will open up. Once they get their food, they get a receipt. The receipt's going to tell you when you're allowed to come back again. So they don't have to call, wonder. Everybody gets a receipt telling them what's the next step for them to do as far as return. So they don't have to call. They always could come after. If there's a day or 2 or 3 before, no problem. Again, when you have so many people, you want to make sure that we have enough resources to take care of those who are coming to pick up their food or register for their food and make sure we have it. So it's a program that works well. And there's a lot of details, a lot of things that we've done in the last 5 or 6 years. I don't know how long we've had this thing, that we keep on editing and changing it just to make it better for Thanksgiving and everything else. Again, the whole idea is to make sure the program works for everybody, not for certain people that are operating it to be favoritizing certain people. I don't want to favorize nobody. Everybody should be treated equal, and the system is accomplishing that goal.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Really, to see organizations like yours embrace technology and figure out ways in which to better serve your clients is really inspiring to hear about. So thank you for sharing your story. Next up, I'm going to move on to Nevin Cohen. Nevin, are you ready?
Yes, thanks. I'm going to share my screen and begin. So I'm going to talk about a point that we learned very early on in a project that I'll describe, and that is that the users are actually key in making new technology work and actually co-designing systems to make it work. And that's something that I think I took from Thomas's presentation, that technology needs to be adapted and innovated. So this project took place at a public housing development in Brooklyn, Farragut Houses. Just for context, and I won't go over this because Molly explained this, we developed this project knowing that the Snap Online pilot was going to be beginning. And we wanted to really explore the assumption by USDA that online shopping could ease food access for mobility limited households, increase access to healthy food, increase retail competition to lower grocery costs. And so we really wanted to find out, does online grocery shopping actually save consumers time and money? And more importantly, from a public health perspective, does it change what SNAP participants actually buy when they are in an online store? We designed this as an action research project with a lot of participants who are on the screen. We're working with the Public Housing Authority, but also with Brooklyn Community Services, which operates a cornerstone community center at Farragut Houses. And on the lower right corner of the screen is the Farragut Food Club. This is the group of residents we worked with for 2 years who formed a food club among themselves to develop this program with us and to help us test it. The project site, Farragut Houses, is located in Vinegar Hill, downtown Brooklyn. As you can see from the map on the right, it's cut off from downtown Brooklyn and Brooklyn Heights by a number of expressways and the off-ramps to the Manhattan and Brooklyn bridges, but it's a gentrifying neighborhood. Farragut itself has 3,000 residents. It's a low-income development with median income of $22,000. It's largely Black and Latinx, and a large portion of the population are single adults taking care of a child, and there's a significant portion of elderly at Farragut. The food environment is really comparable to many food environments in New York. Across the street from the development is Fine Food Supermarket. This was the only supermarket immediately adjacent to the development until Wegmans opened in the middle of our project across the street at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. But within a 30-minute walking distance, there are several options. Stop and Shop was the most popular supermarket for residents, and these others as well. And many residents borrowed cars, paid for car service, and went to BJ's to stock up on groceries. The project was designed in several phases. We spent over a year in developing a relationship with a group of residents who are interested in improving their food access opportunities. So for a year, we met with, on a weekly basis, a small group of residents who formed the Farragut Food Club. The next phase was to work with them to actually co-design a system that would enable them to take advantage of online shopping. This was prototyped when the Snap Online project began in April of 2018. And our role at CUNY was to help evaluate the project. My colleague who's on this Zoom meeting, Katie Tomeno, was integrally involved in the evaluation process. And the goal was to enable this project to be replicated and scaled. And I'll explain at the end why that hasn't happened yet because of the pandemic and other reasons. We use a variety of methods, a mixed method approach to evaluating the project that included surveys. Residents actually tracked their receipts pre-pilot and post-pilot to enable us to compare what they were actually purchasing in brick and mortar supermarkets and online. We used interviews and focus groups to really drill down and find out answers to questions like, did online shopping change people's patterns of shopping? What were their experiences with online shopping? And we use this data to analyze the shift from brick and mortar shopping to online shopping in terms of prices and money spent and time savings. So what were some of the results? We selected 2 online services, Amazon, because that was the only game in town. ShopRite was not delivering to Farragut, even though they were in the online pilot. And Western Beef, which uses Instacart as a delivery platform, although they can't accept SNAP, or they weren't able to accept SNAP because they weren't in the pilot. We registered, actually the Farragut Food Club registered 300 residents to participate. The club members met with Amazon and negotiated waivers of the delivery minimums and monthly membership fees for this pilot. They also negotiated an agreement with Amazon to aggregate orders from Farragut Food Club members who lived at the development so that Amazon would deliver a central drop of the groceries to the community center for pickup. They worked with BCS to get secure storage with refrigeration capacity at the community center. And they organized a service redelivering packages from the community center to homebound individuals. Importantly, they provided technical support to residents in the community center computer room, helping them register with Amazon, helping them identify ways to find bargains and deals and affordable brands online. And they hosted weekly meetings to help members who weren't very comfortable shopping online to place orders collaboratively, basically with the Farragut Food Club member looking over the shoulder as somebody was filling up their market basket. In terms of purchases, we tracked the food categories bought by Farragut residents who were participating in the pilot and compared it to data from USDA on SNAP participants' shopping patterns overall in the US, and found that there was no statistically significant difference between what the Farragut Food Club members were buying and what national SNAP participants were buying. We found that the prices that people were paying on Amazon and at Instacart, Western Beef, were higher than in the brick and mortar stores they were shopping in. The chart on the left shows the price differences between Amazon and the local brick and mortar stores by category. And the histogram on the right shows the number of products with each price difference, with the bars on the right showing the premium that people were paying on Amazon versus the bars on the left showing the number of items where it was cheaper to buy online than to buy in brick and mortar stores. That's largely because, I can go to this in the discussion, because brick and mortar stores use price promotions, buy one, get one free, and discounts, and shoppers tend to buy those products. And there are questions about whether the products that are promoted in brick and mortar stores are healthy or less healthy, but Amazon and other online stores don't generally have an easy way to offer those same kinds of promotions. Another way to look at the price differences, we compared actual market baskets that consumers at Farragut were purchasing from Stop and Shop, the most popular store, to Amazon, and found that the brick and mortar price advantage was between $20 and $40 per shopping basket. When we looked at travel cost savings, we found some interesting results. The shopping time saved was actually a sizable amount of value for the shoppers. We used a Department of Transportation method of comparing the time savings and equivalent annual wages that people would be making to estimate the value of the actual time saved. And you can see the chart on the right, depending on how much time people were spending online, and usually it was more in the 15-minute range. The comparison to walking to a brick and mortar store was significant in terms of value to the consumers. The actual travel cost savings, when you added in the fact that many people had to take public transit to get to those stores, became significant. We prepared a chart comparing the round trip travel, both in time saved and actual money laid out for transit, to the average spend at these different stores. And the travel cost as a percentage of grocery costs could be significant. So what are some lessons that we learned? Online shopping is reality. I'll show you a chart in the next slide that will illustrate what's happened post-pandemic. The impacts of online shopping depend on policy. And some of those policies are related to which grocers get to participate in the program, as Molly talked about. But also they depend on policies like the plan in Biden's infrastructure proposal to broaden access to broadband to rural areas, for example. They also depend on policies at the local level. New York City developed a 10-year food plan, and it has now been talking about the importance of a food infrastructure plan for New York City. And so thinking about local level infrastructure that would allow the last yard delivery, the logistics needed to get online deliveries from a delivery vehicle into people's apartments is really critical. And that might include infrastructure at community centers around New York City that would allow community groups to aggregate and redeliver packages. Equalizing food costs may depend on retailers developing more and easier to access price promotions online, more competition in the online channel. So it's really important that more grocers are able to participate. Easier omnichannel options for SNAP participants. So one of the things we discussed with Farragut Food Club early on was an opportunity to think about different ways of getting food delivered to Farragut, not just through online vendors. That could include box schemes, farmers markets, and cooperatives. The food club wasn't organized early enough with enough members to make it feasible for us to schedule wholesale delivery of produce to Farragut from aggregators or delivery companies. But that was the vision of the food club for the long term. And the importance of having the food infrastructure planning be co-created with the users who know exactly what their constraints are and what their needs are. We learned that the value of time savings can be significant depending on the local food environment and travel modes. And finally, that technical and shopping assistance is essential. One of the ideas for a future project at a public housing development would involve nutrition assistance and consumer economics assistance, along with the technical assistance on how to actually conduct the transaction. And what is really interesting is that the computer center at the Farragut Community Center was really a hub for people to meet and to talk about shopping online. And that physical internet center could be an opportunity to provide the community with nutrition advice, cooking demonstrations, and all sorts of helpful advice on how to save money and eat healthily. So I'll end with the notion that we need to replicate this research now, because this was all conducted pre-pandemic. And the chart from a grocery market research firm indicates that about 1.4 million SNAP participants are shopping at online grocery stores now, and that's roughly 6.8% of the SNAP households in the US. So adoption is increasing. It's lower than the general population, but it's not much lower than the general population. And so I think as more people get used to shopping online, as more SNAP participants get used to shopping online, this will be an important channel to focus on, and public policy needs to make sure that as people gravitate online and get access to more variety and different retailers, that they're able to buy healthy food and buy it affordably. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Nevin. A really great look at a different dimension of what's happening with online shopping. So I'm going to open the floor up for a discussion between the panelists and myself. Additionally, after this period, we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. You might have seen my colleague Rosita has been putting messages in the chat. For those of you who have questions for any of our panelists, feel free to put those in the chat, and Rosita will funnel those to me, and we'll make an attempt to try to ask those questions. So to start off with our group discussion, I'm wondering what sort of impact, if any, that you've seen that issues like the digital divide, that gap between those who already have access to computers, smartphones, etc., and those who don't, as well as challenges related to technological literacy, individuals' ability to be able to assess and acquire and communicate information. So these sort of lingering issues that we've had in society with respect to technology adoption. What do you think that these sorts of issues, if any, impact has had on the ability to effectively leverage opportunities represented by the sorts of technologies today? And anyone on the panel, feel free to jump in and answer this question.
Can I share my screen one more time? I have this, I looked this up recently from the Pew Research Center, Who's Not Online, and it's older adults, 65 plus, 25% report that they don't use the internet, and lower income households under $30,000 annual income, 14% don't use the internet. And there's a racial and ethnic digital divide as well, but and this data comes from 2021, so it's fairly recent, and that raises the important point that as the online channels grow, closing the digital divide becomes even more important, because that could be the next form of food desert. And what we found at Farragut was that community organizations that provide the technology, the computers, and the technical training are really important in bridging that divide. And so from a policy perspective, I think cities and the federal government need to step up and make sure that there's broadband in all public housing developments in New York City and elsewhere, and that there's broadband infrastructure in rural areas, so that there's not a rural-urban digital divide that prevents people from getting access to these food resources.
Great. Thank you, Nevin. Have any of the other panelists in your work had any discussions about issues related to technology literacy or the digital divide?
Yes, Plentiful. One thing you notice is that when we look at pantries in the beginning, a lot of pantries have very little understanding of pretty much how to use computers, and even some of them even have trouble logging into a computer. So with Plentiful, we have a three-step process of onboarding pantries, which is providing them with initial implementation to walk them through how they're going to get started, followed by a detailed discussion about, and then followed by 2 follow-up visits of trainings, providing the staff and volunteers very detailed training on how to log into a computer, how to use Plentiful, and how to even just log out, and simple computer security and information, stuff like that. And we also provide the pantry we work with grants. so they can receive laptops and tablets to get started with using Plentiful. And we also help them with receiving Wi-Fi as well, so they're able to use the system.
Interesting. Molly or Thomas, have you been involved with any sort of discussions related to the digital divide or issues related to technology literacy?
Well, when we began to do the digital, I mean, I was very reluctant. I said, how in the world, somebody like my mother, you know, in her 80s is going to figure out how to use this program? So we simplified it. It's actually child ability. They could just, once they swipe their card, the main thing is to show the picture. I can't put it in every language. We have so many diverse people here that I can't put every item on the screen in its language, so that people could understand pictures. When you go to a local ShopRite or any other store, they don't have different aisles with different languages. So people look at the product, they can see what it is. You can see if it's corn, you can see if it's whatever it may be. So we don't want to glorify the whole process of helping people with food insecurity. We want to just make it simple. So pictures show the strongest issues, what they actually need. So once they go into the program, they don't need to be so advanced technologically. They just need to swipe the card, and that's all you have to do is touch that, touch this. If you want that, touch this. You want that, touch this. At the end, it says complete the order. That's it. I mean, we need to simplify technology, use that in more advanced areas. But for food programs, I don't think we need to go into the 5-star process. I think we just need to simplify it to make it easy for everybody to use. So that's what we put our ambition in. It works wonderfully. I'm so proud to say, wow, all these seniors that are registered here, they actually got this. I thought we would have to spend days and hours and months with these people. No, they picked it up 1, 2, 3 because we simplified it. And that's the reason why it's been extremely successful. So my thing is, if we're going to help people with food insecurity, let's not get into the 5-star process. Let's make it simple, make it usable, and make it where it becomes effective for everybody. And it's working just well on our part. I don't know what everybody else does, but it's working and has been working well that way. One of the things I want to do, whoever's on the whole panel, because we do social services and everything else, I've been looking for a device. Set up a phone, because we don't want to, here's my phone, tell me what you're saying, give it back to me, I tell what I'm saying in my language. I'm looking for a device that we can actually put there physically on the wall, and I would say, hello, what's your name, in my language, and they can say it in their language. Simple. I don't find it anywhere. I've been looking all over for it. I think that would be wonderful, because there's so many different languages out there, and I'm trying to find this device, which nobody seems to make. But if anybody out there has any knowledge about that, food programs that you're using, let me know. I appreciate that, because if I got to build it myself, I ain't gonna know what I'm going to do, but maybe I'll give it a shot one day. But actually, as far as what we're talking about, for what we're doing, it's simplified and it works well.
Thank you. Molly, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just add that, this is an issue that several grocers have run into. Now we have SNAP online purchasing, and that's wonderful, but not everyone knows how to use it or is even aware that it exists. And one of my pilot retailers, a single store operator who launched SNAP online just over a year ago, he had wanted to work with a local community center and host an event that helps walk SNAP shoppers through the process of how to, order their groceries online, just at a really simple level. And then with everything with the pandemic, it didn't end up happening. But those are the types of events that I think grocers can host within their local communities, especially because independents are so intertwined with their local communities. And then also SNAP education is really important. I think if we can provide some of this technical assistance for customers through SNAP education, that would be a really good way to help educate folks on how to order their groceries online.
I want to stay with you, Molly, for the next question. I'm wondering, how overall have the retailers affiliated with your group responded to SNAP online purchasing? Has there been any concerns about it impacting and cannibalizing their business and perhaps decreasing the amount of purchasing due to decreased foot traffic because people are when people tend to shop online, there's not a lot of impulse buying. They know what they want to get, they're going and shopping. So have they been concerned about those sorts of things? Have they seen it almost wholly as a good opportunity to grow their business? What's been the response?
That's a great question. And I actually haven't gotten that question before, but retailers are not concerned at all about not getting enough foot traffic. I think brick and mortar is here to stay. A lot of people like to go to the grocery store, pick up their produce, feel it with their hands, be able to visualize it. But at the same time, e-commerce is also here to stay. And like I said earlier, we've really seen e-commerce skyrocket throughout the pandemic. And as people continued to shop from home, they really got used to doing that and realized how much easier it was in a lot of circumstances. And so e-commerce is not going anywhere, and retailers really see it as a great opportunity to provide an additional shopping option for their customers. Independents have been extremely excited about offering SNAP online purchasing for their customers. Many independents have been working through the application process. Like I said, it's just really lengthy and long, and there's a few barriers standing in the way, which is why we haven't seen more independents launch, but everybody for the most part wants to. It's just in some cases weighing out the pros and the cons, and in some cases it's too expensive to be able to work through the process for the smallest of retailers. But at the end of the day, it's something that they definitely want to offer.
And Nevin, I want to shift to you for a moment. I'm wondering, based on your experience doing this research project, what do you think about overall the concept of SNAP Online? Do you think it's something that's ready for prime time? Do you think it's still sort of in the growth stages? What do you think about this technology, this approach towards expanding the ability to use SNAP? Do you think it's ready?
I do. I mean, based on the experience in our pilot program, which again was pre-pandemic, so people hadn't really thought about the value of shopping from home and hadn't had that experience very much. As Molly said, e-commerce is here to stay. The question for me is how can we make sure that it's really meeting the needs of the SNAP consumers and actually enabling people to have healthier options, be the easy options. One of the challenges of technological literacy is also being able to navigate complex websites, and retailers like Amazon, are finding ways to promote products that are high profit margin to them, just the way brick and mortar retailers do that as well. And there's a possibility of the online channel being basically reinforcing patterns of consumption that are unhealthy. And I think it'll be really interesting to see entrepreneurial companies come up with new web interfaces that enable people to shop for healthier options if they have diabetes or other health needs, to be able to make suggestions for alternative products that they might want to buy. So I think to answer your question directly, we're at the beginning stages of online e-commerce for groceries, but I can't see it turning back. And I think that the challenge for researchers and advocates and policymakers is to make it a healthier option.
Great, thank you. Thomas, I want to return to you for a moment. I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about what motivated your organization to implement this digital client choice platform, and describe to us how the experience of staff and clients differ now as compared to what things were like before. We know with food pantries and similar sorts of operations, they're very sort of paper and pen. They historically have been paper and pen operations. There's lots of documentation that has to be kept about how much food's being served, et cetera. So moving to this sort of technological approach was a big step. And I'm wondering if you could share with us your thinking.
Sure. Well, the whole idea was, when I've been witnessing people have been getting the food that they get from the food program, and then a block down or maybe a couple of stores down, you see a can here, a bag there, different items that they didn't want. And I realized, you know what, it doesn't make sense. If we're going to be a food program helping people with food, and they're going to then take the food once they leave and disperse it someplace because they can't utilize it, that doesn't make sense. it's food waste, and I don't think anybody should want to even support our food program if it's going to be wasted like that. So what do you do about it? Well, again, we gave them choice. So from that time on, it was smart enough to say, okay, come with me. I'm going to let you choose the items that we have based on what you're allowed, how many you're allowed to have. But that took too long. So, I mean, it took me 20 minutes for each client to go along with. And that's when I realized I have to make a decision. It's either we're no longer going to take people, we might have to take off a couple of hundred people in order to maintain the program, or we have to come up with something, digitally that we can expedite the process and at the same time keep the program going to the point where it's not being wasted. And that's the reason why we went into that. I mean, we actually were fortunate enough to create our own. Not that I am technologically intelligent. I work with an individual that, he has a lot of advanced in IT. So I said, listen, if we design this whole thing, because I looked online, I looked everywhere to see if I even could buy something. Whatever I saw wasn't good enough for me. So we created our own, and we had this intelligent individual that know how to write code. I hate him because he's so smart, but he was able to. I said, listen, can you make this for us? Do this, do this. And yeah, and we did. We drove him crazy for the last 4 years. I said, we need to change this or add that or arrange it differently this way, but it worked well. And at the same time, now it makes sense to me. Nobody's walking out with the food that they ordered and wasting it or giving it away or leaving it off the street corner because they know that's what they need. That's what they know what they're able to consume. It's intelligent. So to be practical, the digital program forced us to make that decision. We have to go this way. And it just works well. During this pandemic, we were not able to, okay, everybody come into the waiting room and choose your foods. The line would be about 3 miles long. So we had no choice but to give them everything that we would be able to give them, bring their card to them and let them know whatever you can't consume, whatever you can't use, just leave it there. We'll give it to the next person. So the restocking process and everything was, crazy, but the whole idea, it still worked. So it wasn't like I begged it, here you go. You still had your choice in front of you to leave what you don't think you can use, give it to the next client that could use it. I'm hoping to go back. It's been like 1.5 years doing this. It's been crazy. And we brought our computer systems out there. So this way we don't have to have lines for people to wait an hour, 2 hours. Everything was still done the same way. But instead of choosing it through the machine, they had to it was placed with them through the carts, the wagon carts, and they left behind whatever they felt they can't make use of. And it worked well, I have to say that. So now that we fought through that summer, we fought through the winter, and here comes the summer again, and the pandemic issue seems to be quieting down. I'm hoping we're going to go back to the digital program again. The only thing is, the extra hundreds of more or thousands of more families that registered with us, they have no idea about this digital program. So here we go to retrain again or to make it. But again, like I said before, it's simple. So a child can do it. And that's the whole idea. We develop something that a child can do it. Nothing is complicated. Let's not use technology to complicate. Especially when it's coming to food insecurity. This is not a luxury. There's countries out there, they wish I had a box of something. Meanwhile, we're luxurizing food insecurity. I don't think it's necessary. I think if we could use our talents and skills to do things technologically that can be productive, that can be constructive, that can be helpful to people, that's great. But to bring it to where you have to go to college to learn how to use this so you can choose food to put on your table, I think that's ridiculous. So we just simplified what we do. It's done expeditiously because the process is simple. Again, plentiful. I just got off the phone with one of the representatives from them because I know about it, didn't understand it. She walked me through it. I love it. I think it's a great program. And it works well. We don't have many people with this online purchasing. We don't have it around here that we know about. Again, it worked. Every area is different. So what's happening in my community or areas, we service almost 16 diverse zip codes because there really isn't any food programs, even though every shoe store became a food program from the pandemic. but that's all going to dissipate and die off. And then here we go, standing alone again. But regardless, what we're doing is simple. I think it was necessary. It was never to be impressive. It was just to be, a place that we can actually make sure that we're helping that person and not be overwhelmed by the increase of it because we don't have the time. So it's a great thing. I'm glad we did it. Like I said, if it was human, I would marry it. I've never been more impressed by a system, and not because we created it. I'm sure out there's programs that are working the same way, but I just found it for ourselves to be simple. Our clients realize it's simple, and it's working well. I don't want to fix anything that's not broken. So while it's not broken, we're enjoying it.
Thank you. In the last 15 minutes, I'm going to move on to questions from the audience. And the first question is from Krista. And Krista asks about issues related to privacy. And she wants to know, how can we alleviate fears for those who are concerned about sharing their data, especially for those who may be undocumented? And I think this question applies to both people who are using the SNAP Online services and also using digital services, technological services with Pantry. Privacy is a huge issue when it comes to the way in which we're living our lives digitally. I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts about how we address concerns around privacy with using these technologies.
I'll say that from a retailer's perspective, grocers have told me that the less information that they are even given access to, the better, because I think it also creates a liability for them, and they don't need a lot of that information, and they prefer to not even have it to begin with.
Any others?
Craig, when you're saying privacy, you're talking about the information that we're receiving from each client, how it's being confirmed. Well, I mean, listen, there are standards for most food pantries, not programs out, we ask for their name, proof of where they live. And the reason why we do that, because everything needs to be, if you got 10 people live in your family, we don't want your child, your grandmother, your uncle, your sister, your neighbor next door, everybody to register. You're only going to help a handful of people instead of a large amount of people that need it. So in order to control it, between the Food Bank, United Way, and City Harvest have designed and showed how programs will work in the sense of XYD, proof of where they live, if they have children. And it really depends, because people think that, well, I have 10 kids, I'm going to get a trailer load of food. You're not. So, but we need to make sure everybody doesn't have 10 kids. So you need proof of your child. So you're putting it into the program. I mean, other than we do food, but we do social services, SNAP, and so on. We do ask questions because we want to see if there's other benefits out there that could help you, and if you're not aware of it. So those are the reasons why we do what we do. I mean, if a person came in and says, listen, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to tell you what my name is, where I live, but I want my food. I don't know. Well, I didn't have to go through that battle yet, but I do explain to the clients why we do need to do that. So I really never had any issues. I heard of issues going on with people. I explained why we do what we do. Again, the organization needs to run, I'm going to use the word intelligently. And the reason why you have to use that word, because it needs to be processed that way. Everybody needs to be treated fair, equal. Nobody's, exempt from anything. They need to follow the yellow brick road, so to speak. So we do ask those questions, but we don't use it for anything else. We don't share it with nobody. I don't want to know your social security card number. We don't need to know that. So technically everybody's doing this, so it's not nothing new. We do ask those common questions: where you live. I do in that case ask what income you have, blah blah blah, only so to see where your struggling is. I mean, we have families that register with us. I said, well, you get food stamps? Yeah, I only get like 100 and something. I said, why? You got 3 kids. They sold it. That's all we can get. I said, no, that's nonsense. I'm going to set you up upstairs. They wound up getting $300 more. She never even knew about it. So we're here to advocate for people as well as to help them with food. So if we don't have the information, we don't know who to help. They're not going to usually ask us thinking that we're not be able to help them. So that's why we ask those questions. And it works well. It stays private. Nothing, anybody else can't find out. But you have to do what you have to do in order to keep the program, continuing running beneficially to everybody, to be honest with you.
Any other?
I think the question of digital privacy is a much bigger one, because we're doing everything online and our smartphones are tracking everything. So, I mean, the European Union has been much more aggressive at developing policies to protect people's privacy. And I think we should be advocating for the same thing in the US as well.
Well, again, I'm sorry if I'm breaking it through for a moment. In our program, it's not online. So nobody's going to be able to tap in to utilize the program. I mean, of course, through the food bank, for any programs out there, we do free tax preparation every year. Everything now is on there because that's coming through Salesforce. So can you get through that cloud? Sure, probably could. But in the case with the food, we're not online on that case. So nobody can tap into the cloud and their information is secured that way. So, but everything else, listen, everybody takes chances, no matter what we do. So if we either use technology, we don't, there's always a risk factor for somebody tapping in. So they tapped into my credit cards. I never thought I bought dresses in Dress Barn before. I don't wear dresses, but it was a $900 bill because somebody scanned it. So, I mean, it's going to happen. But again, we're not asking for such deep information. And I'm sure Plentiful is not even asking for deep information as well. So I don't know, Darren, exactly what kind of information, but we don't ask for social security card numbers and what's in your bank account. So I don't think that's going to be too much of a risk factor, to be honest with you. It really depends on the food programs that we're running. I don't see that being an issue.
That makes sense. Darren, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so in New York City, a client is required to receive food service the first time they go to a pantry, whether or not they have the proper documentation. After the first time, the pantry has to clarify the rules and restrictions and about what else they can receive moving forward. And that is the rules for all pantries in New York City. But Plentiful, we actually do not, we also nothing that we don't require is that we do not allow any pantry to ask for social security numbers. We find that is very unneeded and unnecessary. That's something that we are very strict upon. With Plentiful, however, though, with our data privacy, we are very secure and very strong about who we let use our system. So for pantry-wise, you have to go through a verification process where you speak with a representative, and you have to verify your information and verify that you are actually a food pantry and you're not going to try and use any data from the system. Secondly, we go through audits every year, and we strengthen the system every year to make sure it's up to date, has a strong security system, and also that we also are working every year to create other ways to make sure their personal data is encrypted. For instance, Plentiful, there are certain data we have that's encrypted, and not even any of us on the Plentiful team on the back end can download. So we keep stuff like that very secure and safe.
Got it. Nevin, there was a question for you from Susan asking, did you find in your study that there were any issues related to delivery thefts at Farragut houses? She says it's a problem at other NYCHA facilities that she's familiar with. Was that something that came up?
Well, the residents co-designed this system of the deliveries going to the community center. So they were stored there and picked up by residents or redelivered by the Farragut Food Club members to elderly users. So that was a concern of Farragut residents, but they sort of figured out a way around it by using the community center as a drop-off point. And that's my point. I think those kinds of innovations for the last yard delivery issues need to be figured out, especially at NYCHA developments where it may be difficult for delivery services to get into lobbies, and people are working at odd hours of the day and may not be home. So if there's a community center involved, they might be the resource to collect those packages and enable people to pick them up conveniently.
And this next question is for Molly and Nevin. So, and this is from Jess, and Jess asks, do you think that this growth in Snap Online purchasing will decrease incentives for brick and mortar stores to open up physical locations? And what would be the implications of that with respect to food access?
That's a good question. I don't think it's going to necessarily de-incentivize folks from opening up brick and mortar stores, but I really do think it depends on which location in the country we're talking about, because it's not the threat from other independents that would prevent a grocer from opening up a new brick and mortar location, but it would be the threat of an Amazon or a Walmart serving a certain community. However, if we're talking about an area of the country where Walmart or Amazon doesn't serve, a lot of food desert areas, there is a much greater opportunity for a brick and mortar store to come in, because a lot of those areas are not profitable for a big box store like Amazon or Walmart to move into. So I think, again, it really depends on which community in the country and area we're talking about, because Amazon and Walmart are really the biggest threats out there from an e-commerce perspective. But I do think brick and mortar has a lot of pros related to it. Like I said earlier, being able to hold your produce in your hands, see it fresh in front of you, go to the deli counter, the bakery counter, talk to a cashier. Those are interactions that people definitely enjoy. People like going to the grocery store. So some people do prefer that option as well. So I think it really depends is my answer. Nevin, you might have a different perspective.
I was going to say we really don't know yet, because the industry is really sorting out what e-commerce is going to mean for them. And so you might imagine, I think that stores might be smaller footprints, because they have opportunities to deliver goods directly to consumers, and may only specialize in items that need to be seen and touched. Or Whole Foods opened up a dark store in Brooklyn, where they're only using the store for pick and collect and deliver services. So I think we'll see lots of different hybrids emerging in the next several years. And I think that's why policymakers need to really pay attention to online, because it's changing the way supermarkets are making decisions. And so, for example, in New York City, there's a Fresh program to give incentives to brick and mortar supermarkets to expand or open up in underserved neighborhoods. Well, maybe Fresh needs to sort of account for the online channel and think about other infrastructure that might make it more feasible for direct deliveries to serve neighborhoods that don't have brick and mortar supermarkets.
Thank you, Nevin. So we're about at time, so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much to today's panelists. Really great discussion. Obviously, with the increasing role that technology plays in our lives, this will be something that will be revisited over and over again, and something that will, assess what the impact is of all these different changes. Thank you again to the panelists, to all of our attendees. Again, in the chat, there's a link to the document that has more information on the bios of the individuals. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us directly at the Institute. We'll be happy to pass along any additional questions you may have had. And everyone, have a great rest of your day.